All right, we're coming to order here at 5:04 p.m. Let's introduce ourselves, please.
Hi. Scott Pryor, Select Board.
Scott Morley, Select Board.
Dan Webster, board member.
Matt Maxwell, Town Administrator.
Bill Marquette, Emergency Management Director.
Kate Fletcher, delinquent tax collector.
John Buchanan, resident.
Planning Commission.
We also have Rick Brigham from Sullivan and Powers. Any changes to the agenda tonight? What about comments from the public? I've got one. Thank you, Scott Breyer, for how many years you've been on the select board. You've done a wonderful job. I've enjoyed working for you and we're gonna miss you like heck.
He's not going anywhere.
I didn't hear about that.
He thinks he is.
Thanks.
6 years.
6, quite fast, 6 lovely years.
Okay, first up, we have Sullivan and Powers fiscal year 2023 audit. Rick, can you hear us?
And can you hear me okay?
Guys, you hear all right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is a little non-traditional doing a draft, but I wanted to kind of sit down with you guys. I know there's been some kind of discussions about accrual and cash basis, and we were pretty well through to the point where we had converted your financial statements back to cash basis based on some discussions that happened with the select board earlier. So what you have in front of you is a draft of the cash basis financial statements for the town of Coventry for 6/30/23. Does everybody have that in front of them?
We have a copy, yep.
Okay. So in it, like, I'm gonna just start, I guess, probably on page 7. So this is basically the cash basis balance sheet for the town as of 6/30/23. So you'll see all the major funds, general fund, highway, ARPA, building maintenance. These are your assets and liabilities under the modified cash basis at 6/30/23. And you can see that looking at the fund balances for the general, you have obviously 11,851,750. The highway fund's a little down, 72,036 negative. ARPA fund ended the year at 750,705. Building maintenance fund ended the year with a $685,276 surplus or fund balance. And road infrastructure ended the year with 1,391,858. So if you're looking for the fund balances of each of those funds or where they sit, you know, we always say that the balance sheet is basically a snapshot in time. 6/30/23, this is what your assets and liabilities, when you put them on paper, that's what your fund balances come down to be. If you see the second to the last column over, it's called the non-major governmental funds. You have some other funds. You have some other funds in the back of the financial statements where you'll see them on like pages 36, 37, 38. Those are the combining schedules of the non-major. So if you're looking for the balance sheet and you're looking for the income statement for those individual funds, and they're back there, they total up and they come up to the front here. So all the assets are accounted for here. So if you look from there, like if you look at the totals from pages 7, and then you go back to pages 5, this is what we call the government wide. This is again, looking at
Thanks.
the balance sheet of what the town is for government wide for everything, all your funds combined into one. So you'll see that the totals of these funds from page 7 equate back to what's on page 5 there, just like they will for, you know, exhibit B on page 6 to exhibit D on page 8. Those are just basically, again, each one of them is the balance sheet and the income statement for those major funds. And then the revenue total, or then the totals of each come forward to that, what we call the government wide. Most people don't focus on the government wide. They're mostly focused on pages 7 and 8. Again, the balance sheet for the major funds, that's what most people are looking at. If you're looking at page 9, that's the the Edmund Douglas Price Fund, which is a private purpose fund. So that's the balance sheet for that with a restricted fund balance of 207,754. And again, if you look at the next page on page 10, you can see the income that was in and the expenses out for that fund. The other fund on this is called the custodial fund. That's basically you collecting the school's taxes. So it's almost like a trust fund. You're collecting all the school's taxes to remit back to the state. If you start looking at pages 11 through 28, those are what we call the notes to the financial statements. So if you're looking for a deeper dive in what makes up the investments, what makes up what cash is insured and uninsured, let's just kind of thumb through it real quick. You'll see like on pages 11 and 12, those are just kind of talking about what the general fund is, what the highway fund is, ARPA fund, kind of describing the funds and the basis of accounting. And you'll see that kind of continuing on under page 13. And then into page 14, we start getting into describing your different kinds of assets, cash, investments, interfund receivables, payables, and kind of giving a description of each kind of those assets and liabilities. And then if you look at page 15, you'll see at the bottom there, that's where we're basically identifying the restatement going from your modified accrual basis of accounting to cash basis, kind of reconciling it from where you were to where you are now under the cash basis. So if you're ever trying to get back to last year's audit, this would be a good footnote to look at to see how it basically gives you the detail of how we went from modified accrual to cash basis. Again, looking at kind of page 17, it tells you about the cash. It tells you that it's collateral, shows you the collateralization, kind of gives you a breakout of the cash accounts. Same kind of thing on page 18 where it talks about the breakout of the different kinds of investments you have. I believe most of them are at Fidelity, related to mutual funds, traded funds, and common stock funds. Then page 19, we get into breaking out where we're transferring all the appropriations to the different funds for reappraisal, building maintenance, road infrastructure, road capital, flood recovery. All those transfers are highlighted in there as well. And then if you're looking for like a more detailed look at the fund balances, you can kind of take this fund by fund. It tells you what the restricted fund balances can be spent on, why they're restricted. You'll see that from page 20 right on down through 21, kind of outlining, like if you're looking at page 21, you'll see at the top where there's 3 funds that got combined with the general fund, which basically was the reappraisal fund, the general fund, and the community and economic development fund. Those all get for financial statement purposes get rolled up into the general, but you can break out the pieces of the fund balances here for those. A lot of pages 22 through 28 are related, or through 27 are related to your VEMR's pension plan. Those are just all required disclosures. Obviously, all that's handled by VEMR's. You just pay in your contributions, but a lot of this is just required wording for the footnotes related to the plan itself. None of it is stuff that you obviously have to deal with, especially under the cash basis. You're just basically paying the premiums as they're calculated. Looking at pages 29 through 32, these are what you're probably used to seeing throughout the year. These are the budget actuals, which I'm sure you're getting on a regular basis from David, showing what the budget actuals look like throughout the year. And this is the final version of that after all adjustments are done, kind of going through and looking at, what your budget did versus your actuals. And as you can see, kind of, at the end of the year, totaling up what total excess of cash, you were budgeting to lose about 500,000. You only lost 66,000. So it was to the positive about 477,000. Then there's another budget actual on page 34 to 35, same kind of thing for the highway fund. So this is the final budget actual for that particular fund. Again, you'll see where that fund balance pretty much pretty much even this year, and had a deficit last year and had a slightly larger deficit to the 72,000 which will obviously equate right back to the page 7 that we started with. And then, like I said, the next few pages, 37, 38, 39, are all the combining schedules of those other funds that roll forward to the non-major funds on pages 7 and 8. And when we do our audits, we always, if we have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we find in the course of doing our audit, we always have to report those. The material weakness that we found was related to segregation of duties, which is related to making sure that whoever signs checks doesn't reconcile the bank account. And I think there was some change during the year where that started to happen again. I believe it's been corrected now. So I think that's moving forward fine now. But at the time during the audit, there were certain months that there was a segregation of duties issue, so we had to bring it up. There'll be a few things that obviously there'll be some other recommendations that we'll make in a separate letter that we'll get to at some point. But basically what we think is that there should be like a documentation of the internal control system there, a written document showing all the controls of paying bills, reconciling accounts, paying payroll, how rates are established, just describing key controls in all those areas and have it in a written document, especially if grantors come in. A lot of times they like to look at those documents. We also think that there's some policies that could be updated for uniform guidance, which again relates to all the grants. If any grants you get, you might have to apply for, you might have to adhere to uniform guidance, and you might want to have your policies updated to adhere to that. And there'll be a few other things, conflict of interest policy. There's some numerous outstanding stale checks that probably need to be researched. Few other things like that that we obviously can go over at another time, but they're all, again, these are just other recommendations. They don't have to be in writing. We usually put them in writing, and we'll get to that letter once it's finalized. But there's just things that if we're going to bring it up, we might as well put it in writing, make sure everybody's on the same page with it. But the key one for me in dealing with material weaknesses or significant deficiencies was the segregation of duties, which, like I said, is now corrected. So I've been talking to a couple of board members over time, trying to talk about cash basis, accrual basis. And I know that you guys are still kind of, trying to figure out the positives and negatives to each. So I didn't know if people had questions on that they wanted to discuss tonight or at another time.
I've got a couple of other questions before we go there, so I don't
Okay.
forget. If it's a good time for that.
Sure. Yep.
First, Rick, I'd say thank you very much for all the work that you guys have done. We had a chance, so that everybody knows, we had a chance yesterday. I got Rick on the phone, poor Rick. And he took the time and answered a lot of my questions so that we didn't have to waste everybody's time tonight, just for clarity. So thank you for that.
No problem.
As you've talked tonight, I've listened and thought back to some of my original questions. I only have two that are jumping out at me right now. One is on page 20, fourth paragraph down. Explain that one to me a little bit. It says, when expenditures are incurred for purposes for which both restricted and unrestricted amounts are available, it is the town's policy to first consider restricted amounts to have been spent.
Yeah, so in light of any sort of policy that's probably written into statute, I'm not sure you actually have a physical written policy on this, but basically the rule of thumb is if you have some unrestricted money in a fund and restricted money in a fund, usually you're spending the restricted first, just so that you can release those restrictions. And that way you'd be down, it's a way of identifying kind of a first in, first out. So you're looking to try to spend that restricted money first. And then if you run out of restricted money, then you work into the unrestricted money. I'm not sure you have a lot of funds with both, but it's just a general, it's probably more of a generalized wording in all towns. So I'm not sure if we looked at your fund balances, whether you'd see any of that or not. So I'm not sure it's really all that applicable.
Um. I think it's not applicable. And I don't know if we should leave that in there. And we're unique. And sometimes we're saying, we're thinking the same things, but we're using different words to describe it. And I'm wondering if this is one of those times. So we have a number of what we call special reserved restricted funds.
Yep,
And those have been voted upon by the voters
Yep.
for the specifics in which they're identified for.
correct.
Um, so one of the things that we've done this year is done a lot of talking about why we're using those funds, when to use those funds, how to use those funds, and not be in and out of them as much as we have been recently. So much so that we're gonna be asking the town in town meeting to do away with all these restricted funds.
Hmm.
And so that paragraph in and of itself is a bit confusing for me because that's not our policy.
Okay.
So I don't
Maybe I
know.
can reword it for you and give it again, and I can send it to you. There's going to be a certain required disclosure in there, but I can probably reword it to clarify. But again, it's like if, just so you understand what it really means, if I'm in, like if I'm in the, uh, if I'm on page 7 and I'm looking at the roads infrastructure fund, if you had, and you'll see it's all committed there, it's a fund balance, right? But if you had some committed and then unrestricted, we would be reducing the committed first because you're wanting to reduce the restrictions, which are the votes by the voters, which is committed. Votes by the board are assigned. Unrestricted is unrestricted. So that's why we break out those analogies. So the point was, again, it's a kind of a required disclosure, but I can reword it so it's clear, more clear for you guys. But basically it was saying, if you have money in the road infrastructure, that some of it's unrestricted and some of it's committed, we're going to spend the committed or restricted first. That's all. That's all it's really trying to say. And like I said, I think if you look down all the funds, none of them have multiple other than the general fund, where you basically have some committed and then you have the rest of it's unassigned.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it goes back to what I sort of said, which is we're thinking the same thing and saying it a little bit differently. For
Yep.
example, the roads and infrastructure fund that we're looking at on page 7 is all restricted. There is no unrestricted funds in there.
And that's my point. It would only, my point would be, it would only, that section that's in the financials, which I like said is in pretty much everybody's financial,
Right.
it will only apply to you if you have both in one. And you just, like, I'm looking at your financials, I don't see it. So it's just not, it's
Okay.
like, it's more of a, hey, if we did have it, we'd spend the restricted first. That's kind of all.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
The other one was just, I don't know, so on page 32, the bottom line. That kind of, I saw your head snap too. We had a budget of an anticipated deficiency of 504,000.
Yes.
In that fiscal year.
Yeah. So if I, let me just go back to here.
That's right.
So yeah, if I look at your budgeted revenues, as we found them, were 1,540,000 or 1,540,500, and your budget expenses per the voted budget were 205,2,801. So that meant you were basically trying to use up some of your surplus of 504,439.
You know what I mean? It could be when the Casella check is applied or not applied.
Could that have been based upon us changing from the accrual to the cash in that year?
No, I don't know. This would be pure budget. The budget wouldn't change with cash or accrual. So this is basically saying, it looks like based on the way you did your budget, that you budgeted to lose money in the general fund to use some of your reserve.
Glad that year's over. Okay,
Makes sense.
something doesn't make sense there because our
We never took money from restricted funds and put it in the general budget.
how'd I miss that? Say that again?
We never took money from restricted funds and spent it in the regular budget. And when we did the math, we had extra money left over in the budget of 50 grand or 60 grand. Correct?
Yeah,
And we just used it.
Bought a truck.
We bought a truck. So,
explain that, talk to Rick on that.
yeah, so when we were talking with David, the end of fiscal year 2023, it seemed like we had about $60,000 left over in the general budget. And we decided to buy a town truck with it. We didn't take the money out of
Restricted.
any of the restricted funds for that. We took it all out of the surplus that was left over in the general budget. So to have a $500,000 negative there, I don't see how that's possible.
Well, I can certainly discuss it with David, but based on the voted budget, based on what was, set for the tax rate, if you look what was set for the tax rate, which becomes your revenue budget, because you'll usually subtract out what we're gonna collect for, let me look at your different revenues here. So yeah, the biggest revenue budget that you have is the Waste USA fees. So the budget for that, according to, I think, the tax rate when you set it was 1.5 million. And you've spent, and you wanted to, in your budget, when you passed it, voted for 2 million. So that's the difference. But I really believe if you look back, you probably decided you wanted to use some of the surplus that you had to reduce, to not, to have a budgeted deficiency. Because that's the way it's showing here.
I see what he's saying. He's right. And that was
We
a
carried that.
a big mistake.
We carried that much forward from the year before.
Well, you have a lot of fund balance. I mean, you have like 11 million. So,
Right.
how you spend that down, it's about managing that and deciding, do we want to offset the budget with some of that fund balance? That's what it looks like to me.
That wasn't the plan, though. Have to spend some time looking at that.
We can, take a
Yeah.
look at it and look at it with David and ask him if there's something I'm missing or something that we're missing. I'd be glad to correct that if there is, but that's based on everything we saw with the raising of the tax rate and the voted budget. Those are the numbers. And I think those even agree back to your trial balances on your NEMRIC accounting system.
So we don't raise any taxes for our municipal.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah. So we don't set a tax rate for that.
correct.
All of the bulk of majority of our revenue comes from the Waste USA.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll flush that out.
Okay.
Thanks. The other issue I had, it kind of went back to something that you had just said before I got us off track. It was, I wanted to take a chance and an opportunity to talk about the town considering hiring an accountant. You and I have discussed it a little bit yesterday. Matt and I've discussed it, and there's been some other discussions. We are, a lot of what I'll say is my opinion, but I've got some experience here now and thinking through a lot of this stuff, looking at some of our historical factors, looking at some of the things that we're identifying now, and that we just experienced this year, leads me very strongly to say that we should be considering more professional accountant level work in our finance. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of moving parts. We have a lot to consider for our future so that we don't have to go and be trying to raise revenue with taxes. We're shooting for a goal not to do that. We haven't gotten those plans done as we anticipated we would have done by now, and there's a lot of other moving parts also. So I think what are your thoughts on that, Rick? You've taken a look at our finances now, you've looked at what we do and how we do it.
Yep. So
Um,
my
my-
initial thoughts are that looking at paying bills, paying payroll, taking in receipts, paying the school their taxes, all that flushed out fine. So we didn't see any like huge problems in that area, and where uh, finance was creating problems, or where there were problems. Where I think I've heard it enough now that I feel like you guys are looking for something different than almost any other town that I have, because that's really what most small towns are looking focused on. But the truth is, you've got a lot of investment reserves, you've got a lot of investment dollars, you've got a lot of trying to figure out the future. What are you going to use this money on? Are you going to have the reserve funds? Are you going to, when, how long is the host fees going to be coming in, and how do you manage when the host fees are no longer coming in, to being able to manage the tax rate of having to raise taxes at that point? And I have no idea off the top of my head how many years we're looking at, but it feels like you're looking at more somebody who's more like a financial manager slash accountant, somebody who can, help you develop those policies and help you develop whether you want to have these reserves. And so I think that's what I think you guys are leaning toward now, more looking for. But I don't think that's going to change a lot of your day-to-day practices of what still needs to happen in paying payroll, taking in receipts, recording revenues, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's going to drastically change, because I don't think there's a lot to change on that. I think it's more like we already talked about tonight, budgeting, how that works, reserve funds and how that works, investing those uh, assets that we have to maximize investment income. I think it feels like that's what you're kind of leaning to, which the only thing I'm going to just throw out there to you that I've, talked to many of my clients about, it's hard to find those people. It's hard to find them now because there's just not a lot of finance people out there. You may get lucky, but I'm going to tell you, even hiring in my firm, in my business, it's very hard finding finance professionals, accounting professionals anymore. So I'm just, I mentioned this over the last couple of days to my partner, Fred, and he just said, geez, just make sure they know trying to find somebody of this kind of caliber is going to be troublesome and going to take some time.
Okay. Well, Matt's got plenty of time.
But certainly anything you'd want to do with changing that and trying to figure out, how that changes your books or how you want it to change your books, we'd certainly be willing and able to help you out and help you kind of guide this new person or this new group in make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because there'll be that initial trying to figure out what you are, what you want to be, and make the changes to get where you want to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else from anybody else?
I don't know.
I think we're good, Rick. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you, Rick.
Just let me know on the budget issue. And if I have to make any changes in the financials, let David know and I'll communicate with those. And before we get you finals, we'll make any changes if there need to be.
What about the material weakness, before we let you go, Rick? Do you want us, now that you've, just discussed it and recognized the
Yep.
corrective action, do you want us to put that in letter form?
Yeah, so what we do in that, so there'll be a few things to finalizing this audit. Well, a few things will be, number one, I've got to just send you over an updated engagement letter for the cash basis. That just needs to be signed. We'll send you a client rep letter, which David will sign, saying he gave us all the documents, and it's a standard letter everybody has to sign. And then we will do an ad check. And then, yes, we just need a response on town letterhead about that finding, saying this is what we've done, we fixed it, and here's how we did it. And we actually bind that response right into the final audit report.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the emergency management plan. Scott Worley.
I was still thinking about this. Okay, stop thinking about that. Emergency management. Yeah. Phil. Phil's here.
Hey, Phil's here.
Okay, emergency management plan, the,
This was more of the Nico.
You had the Nico meeting.
so Nico, Northeast Kingdom Organizing has been here twice in the building and had meetings with anybody who wanted to attend. I attended both, Matt and I attended the first one, Phil and I, the second one, which was a week or two ago. For those that don't know, what the issue is in a nutshell is there are a number of thoughts and opinions, many of which I share, some of which I don't. That's the nature of things. About the town's readiness and our work and our efforts toward emergencies. And it's all emergencies, flooding, the spill we dealt with, all of those sorts of large scale emergencies where the town has assets that we deploy to help people in those times. So this group has done a good job, I think, in coming to town, talking to a lot of residents, talking to us as town officials to say, what's up? Where are you at? What do you do? What do you not do? Is there anything that they can help us with? A lot of discussion around all that stuff. So Matt and I heard, Phil and I heard mostly flooding, but that's not the end of things. But we heard things like updating our emergency plan better, being more communicative and transparent, looking for volunteers in our community that would be willing to step up and help in those emergencies, to run shelters or to help communicate with their neighbors, help shuttle people, any number of different things. And so the last meeting, the second meeting that we had, Phil and I attended, the discussion then went to, yes, all of that seems reasonable. All of that sounds like a good idea. But the big but is always manpower, coordination, organization, hierarchy, authority levels, and all that stuff. So we had some of those discussions. I let them know that I would bring this here today to have this discussion with the full board about the meetings and what has been talked about. Phil can go into more of the detail of that than I, but essentially what the thought process is, correct me when I'm wrong, Phil, is that everybody had a pretty good sense and understanding, I think, after the second meeting that, the town select board is the authority when it comes to such matters, but we need help. We're the policymakers, we're not the doers in most cases, but we have Phil as our emergency management director, and we have other people who are stationed and personnel capable to deal with all of these sorts of things, but we need help, but we want to do it in an organized way. And so I think the conversation needs to continue and take the next step with this board to talk about what does that mean and work with Phil about what he thinks needs to be done in order to coordinate that effort for volunteering, for communicating with all those things. It's probably going to take a monthly meeting with Phil as the organizer and the authority at that table to identify, to listen and critique and collaborate and work with them and bring those things to the board so that we can flush it out and we can help direct, or we can direct the effort, so that we look at budgeting, we look at, when we go and buy cots and provide water and stock the shelter. We've done this in the past, but now we can't find it. So we have to create a system, obviously, that has a little bit more foolproof than that. It's a small example, but that's That's sort of where we at.
Biggest thing that came out, or Scott was alluding to, is creating a community action group.
There
That I
you go,
think is not necessarily a town entity group
right,
that we agree with.
Mhm.
But is a community group that I, as the director, is the liaison between the town and the select board and that group. And can utilize them as a resource in the time that everything. hits the
It's-
fan.
Would you think it would be out of the scope of duty for the members of the planning commission? If there's 4 members, active members of the planning commission, they already have a meeting once a month. Have emergency management, have Phil go to the meeting, get the planning commission involved, and then make it a requirement of each planning commission person to be in direct contact with 1 volunteer. So now all of a sudden we go from 4, to 8 people.
That could be another step in the process.
And then, then so you're, you guys are, the select board's talking with you, they're talking to your planning commission, they're talking to all of a sudden you got 8 plus 3, you got, or you got 13 people plus Matt, 14 people involved. I mean, it's an idea, I don't know.
yeah, that's exactly what's happened, much more so in the second meeting, which was brainstorming, coming up with thoughts, opinions, and ideas around how to deal with this matter or that matter. And so I think our role, our job is to accept it or not accept it. We're gonna talk about that. And then if we are to accept it, which I'm inclined to personally, but we could have talked about that, is then, what does that mean? What do we do? Phil works directly for us, and so we would need to probably coordinate that through these guys around what does that, what do we want that to look like? We want a monthly reporting, we want a quarterly reporting, we want emergent reporting, obviously, like the last time. That's a separate matter. And then, we need to be not overwhelmed with a whole bunch of issues all at once, and everybody's real quick to do that to us, but working with Phil, talking about the things we talked about, looking at dredging and.
Yeah, biggest one was communication with. Things are happening. Rivers. That was a discussion we had.
Advance notice.
And I know it was in advance notice, I know it was brought up in a board meeting previously, and having a system to do that, which we do have access to, and that's one of the things I'm gonna work on.
Like we talked with the school and they were gonna,
Well, so we have the VT alert through the state that is separate from the school that we have access to, and it's one thing we're gonna work on is do the training to bring that into the town so we can do that directly instead of having to.
Yep.
So that was a big one that was, I think, and then also mitigation was another one.
So where are you at? What's your thinking on this? Are you charging in full force?
I think it's we need to start from there, you guys. Figure out how the structure will look like and go out that way. Like, I think we say yes to the group, I do, but I think we need to have from the select board out, figured out, before you really ramp that up. Fully, just so it's all.
I think in this situation, you really want to keep the select board as policymakers
Right,
and not get into the weeds
yeah,
of,
no, I'm not meaning how the group will work.
Yeah.
More the policy for flowing.
and so are you thinking a monthly meeting
For the
chaired
group,
by yourself? Yeah,
with the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning, a monthly meeting, maybe more, just to get it going,
right.
and then see how it goes, you could move to quarterly at some point, but.
do you think you could get pre-approval probably maybe from the Coventry Foundation to support the funding for the emergency? I mean, I would think that would be a great thing for them to fund meals,
I think we come up with,
water, then, just it's an automatic approval up to $5,000 for emergency supplies and then we just get them. Maybe they reverse, and, you know, so if you have this group,
That's two good ideas.
no, but this group needs to have money.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that was the other part. of
they
the
can't just,
discussion from
you can't
guys
just not
is-
have money, so we gotta figure out where's the money first off.
So we do have some budgeted funds.
And I think that's the thing is. For the point in time, we gotta go through and figure out, I don't. Shelter supplies is the big one of them, and then yes, to the day of incident, having to have the shelter open and that type of thing. And that's a bigger discussion to have, okay? Do we wanna do what you're talking about, or I know we have access to Red Cross too, that supplies all that too, where there is no money out of our pocket. But that's
The
the
initial-
details we have to get to know what that is and how that looks from them and the other way too.
But the initial day one would be nice, like day one, when you say, okay, the community center's open for emergency, whatever, okay, people come here. There's no water, you know, no
Right.
coffee, you know,
And that's part, I think that's the part where the group, we can come up with, action group, come up with, okay, what do we think needs to be in this thing? And then we look at the group does, I can spearhead and look at, okay, what can Red Cross provide, what do we need to do on our own, and where, and then we bring that to here, and you guys go, okay, let's check with the foundation. I think my mind is the money should still flow here, and there's not anything in the community group, because it's not a.
and maybe those are supplies that we could have here and then use them up on town meeting day. Maybe we have 20 cases of water and we use them up on town meeting day and we replenish them. You know, the coffee and whatever, and just get a new stock, you know. Things to think about for sure.
Yeah, so. I think that you're gonna be a busy boy. And I think that's good. I think that there's a tremendous amount of energy that anybody would need to really pull that off. When I spent a lot of time that night here, you know, talking and thinking through how many issues there really are that you have to keep your eye on, or create a system that helps you to keep your eye on that, and that's gonna fall to you. And so I would say if there's support here at the table for this right now, I would say that that's sort of the direction that we should send you right now, which is to say to you, go coordinate it. Go get the nucleus of that group that we have met with now twice. And let them know that, you know, we're supportive of it and we want to see the initial, they're very good at helping coordinate that stuff. To see those first steps, continue the brainstorming, but see the first steps and then develop that conversation. What I don't want to see is a whole bunch of ideas that come back here. That's not what I want to see. I want to see
You know, the proposals.
proposals that have been thought out, that are in draft forms, that are, you know, we've identified the emergency shelter issues, and here is 2 proposals on how we think we can adequately supply it. Here's the costs, that sort of detail, so that we can think that through. Because you know, you've sat there, so that's a lot of work. And then just keep building it, and we'll always, the ideas that Scott just said, you know, we can filter that back and say, you know, go bat that around and see what you can come up with and flush it out. But, I guess I would say that I think it's good. I think if you.
I had a good feeling.
Yeah, I think if you spend the energy and you tap into theirs, they have a lot of it, at least at the moment, then we're gonna make a better town. And that's the way to do it. It's pretty grassroots.
Yeah, I think it's good. Okay. Thanks, Bill. It's a good job.
So go do it.
Okay, next up is summer paving projects. 2024, you don't have to make any decisions on this, but you have 2 quotes in front of you, fixed prices. Obviously, it's all contingent on what happens at town meeting day, but any kind of news we could give these two companies before that or around that time, they'd much appreciate it. I don't know if you want to enter, say the things on the record or.
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
So I reviewed, reviewed the bids and, I think at this time, I think we should wait till after town meeting. And to make a decision, because we need to see how much money the voters are gonna approve. Because I believe the amount of money that is needed to do what we put out there is more than what we'd asked for.
We asked for $850,000 a year. Of course, that article would be amended either way, depending on how people feel at town meeting, or they can. pass it as written.
And we haven't asked any of the bidders, if we don't accept their total bid and we take off a road or two, are the prices for those roads the same?
Right.
Is the bid gonna increase because we're not doing an $850,000 project, we're only doing an X amount of dollar project? So I think we have enough, I think we have enough information from the bidders at this point for the town to proceed until after town meeting. And at this point, nothing's happening. I think if they know next week or in 3 weeks, our decision or you guys' decision, I don't think it's not gonna make any difference.
No, they'll take our money.
Yeah, I think.
So both of you guys are the ones that, I haven't dealt with this, you haven't dealt with this, but you guys know, you've met with them both.
We know what we're doing.
You're confident, yeah, so I'm confident in you,
Okay.
so.
On Pikes here, there's a Hamel Road base coat,
Yep.
Down below you,
that little road,
right before the river.
yeah. The town keeps up with that road?
Not that's.
I know where it is, I don't know why it would be paved,
I thought it was 5'4".
75
It is.
feet,
75 feet, just probably just an apron, right?
It's just like origin and off of Webster.
okay.
Just like
Just
the house, just below the bridge, like
Is
I
that
reach into that, too.
That's the.
Oh, for an apron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm guessing that's. that's
So
all
is that,
reach
is
in
that
there.
bottom?
75 feet's not very far.
75 feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good catch. Right there.
yeah,
So they're just gonna go into where it floods.
a
must
little
be.
bit, yeah, okay.
No, I know. There's an old stone culvert there.
That's a flood mitigation thing.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's, yes, okay.
Okay.
Part of our FEMA. Who's gonna pay for that?
So who's are you gonna do that? Are you gonna relay to them or Matt, or how are we doing that?
I can relate to, I have both.
Yeah, I can too.
yeah, either one.
I mean, it's been related, they both know that this is going to town meeting. I mean, they've known that, they know that.
So
already.
we should just give
They
a
just,
courtesy
they just,
call.
they knew we were discussing it tonight, they
Right.
asked if, if we do have any inclination of what we're gonna do, the earlier we can let them know.
So I think
Just
what,
a courtesy, just a courtesy.
what we need to do is reach out to Pike and reach out to Hutchins and just find out, just ask them if we're gonna take a road off or two.
Yep.
To fit within the
Yep.
approved amount, will that affect the budget? And then we'll make our decision right after town meeting.
Yep.
Question from the budget side, how much is on that is mitigation through FEMA or could be grant fund, FEMA funding, is it just that part?
I
Yes.
think it's just that, yeah.
And that's
Just
probably-
that.
That's probably not a lot in.
Just the Webster River, and I don't know if that's gonna, they might say no to that, that's just they're thinking about
You
it.
have that in.
It's in there,
In the
I
project.
think it's only about 50 tons.
but it's,
So I didn't know if there was any others you.
I don't, we won't get an answer from people on that for,
A while.
A couple of years.
no,
It'll be this spring.
it won't be before town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is Recreation Director.
Good catch. Thank you.
We funded this position in the budget this year. I recommend that we give the position to Brittany Marquette. She's been organizing the fall festival for the last few years. It's not a lot of money, but just something shows a little appreciation for the work she's done over the years and the work going forward. tradition you've had in the past. It won't involve any other stuff in the town, just the fall festival, so,
She's been doing it for free,
correct.
and the position that we have that is funded has been vacant.
Correct.
And so you're recommending that we give her the title and give her, how much is it?
$750,
The,
something like that.
and say thank you
Yes,
for all that you do for
that's
us.
what I'm recommending.
I think it's,
That's a good idea.
yep,
We need a motion,
Yes.
make a motion that we make, Brittany Marquette, the give her the title of the recreation director and the sum of $750. For 20,
I'll check the exact.
good check. All right,
The budgeted
the
amount.
budgeted amount.
Yeah. Okay,
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
very good.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Next up is town accounting. We kind of touched on this a little bit before. Scott, is there anything else you wanna say on this subject?
Yeah, I guess it's always good to listen to everybody with an opinion, but then ultimately make the decision. And so, I heard the thoughts and opinions of our auditor tonight. That's based on about a 10-minute conversation that we've had, he and I, a couple times, so there's a lot of other moving parts that he's unaware of. But I think for this table, I think it's important. I think that we've made a decision this year to adjust ourselves from accrual basis to cash basis. We'll probably regret that if we don't change it back in a fairly short amount of time, meaning, not weeks or months, but within a year or two. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I've done some research. I've talked with a few different accountants now. And it's extraordinarily complicated to do that work properly. And it's really accountant level work. It's not the normal person coming in and getting elected or appointed as treasurer off the street to be able to do that type of work. It's a lot. It's the capital budget, it's planning going forward, and it's a lot of the things that he touched on, but it's a lot. So for me, having been here now again for a year, looking at what we do, what we don't do, a couple hundred things I've asked for us to do that we haven't done yet. It's important, and we're in charge of it, and we're responsible for it. And to do that well, I believe firmly now, very firmly, that we need an accountant. We need monthly reports. We need quarterly reports. We need budgeting reports. We need grant consideration issues. A lot of things that some parts of it we get, some parts of it we don't. We need to have better comprehensive conversations as it relates to our investments. We've not been doing that. There's a lot of things that are passing us by. That I don't want us to look back years from now and say, geez, we talked about that, but never did. We're getting up into the tens of millions of dollars now. Money makes money if you let it, if you're smart enough to know how to do it. And we're just not doing it. So I think in short order, probably after town meeting, we have to have that discussion and with more aggression, and probably look at reaching out and finding what's available, what's not available for that type of service, and what sort of feedback we get from any of the local, or I don't know, probably most of that work could be done remotely, right?
I would believe
Would
so.
be done remotely, so we wouldn't have to.
I wouldn't have to share my office.
No, we're not looking for an employee. We would be looking for a contract.
I don't think it'd cost that much.
I don't either.
Once it was set up, once the spreadsheet was set up and it was automated and the items were on the sheet, I think it would work itself. It'd be just plugging in the numbers.
Yeah,
I think the most important thing is like getting the number. What's the goal of the town? What is the investment goal to fund the municipal, so there's never a municipal tax? How much money do we need? And how long before we get there? And how much more are we gonna get in revenue to get to that goal? And I think we go from there, then you can help budget your spending.
yeah, we need to create those plans. We need to, you know, we need not to come to every January and be scrambling to do a budget. That should be done every day, week, month, right? We shouldn't be having to research and rethink with our road foreman, what he has or doesn't have for equipment. All of that stuff should be done,
It's automated, we already know. For the next 5 years, you know what he needs.
right? And so we can plan these budgets and do this work and right down the bridges, you know, there should be plans for that stuff. So we need some help in that arena, I think, and so, like some of the other things that we've done in the last year, you can plan on seeing that on most of our meetings.
Sure.
Going forward for a little while, extending after town meeting and whatever the board makeup is to sort of rehab the discussion if we need to, and then take some steps. Now, what do you guys think about that? Am I crazy?
I agree.
I thought there'd be
100%.
something like that when I
You
started. I was
figured that's
kinda
what it
like,
was?
all right, well,
Yeah,
I mean, it's better than it was 6 years ago, but it's not where it needs to be.
definitely.
Okay, very good. Thanks, guys. Next up, we have, Jeff Young's resignation. You have a letter in front of you that I'd like one of you to read, and then all of you to sign it.
Acceptance of your resignation as road crew. Dear Jeffrey, on February 9th, 2024, you verbally resigned your position as road crew member for the town of Coventry in the presence of town administrator Matt Maxwell. The select board hereby accepts your resignation from your position as road crew member. If you have any town-owned property such as equipment, keys, and the like, please return them to the select board on or before February 23rd, 2024. On behalf of the town, we extend our sincere gratitude for your service to the town. We hope you enjoy lots of success in whatever future endeavors you should pursue.
Thank you.
So I make a motion.
So that verbal resignation was a week ago,
February 6th.
2 weeks ago.
What's the date?
The date on the top of the well.
Whatever the date on that.
So he gave us a
February-
2 week
February
notice,
9th.
Yes,
which
Friday is his last day.
is this Friday. Okay,
Friday will be what, the 23rd,
Third,
23rd,
I think, I mean, whatever.
23rd.
23rd.
okay, and that's what you said, okay,
Yep.
that's, so,
Oh, yeah, February 23rd.
okay, and, okay, yeah,
Make a motion that we accept Jeff Young's resignation as provided on this letter written to him by Matt Maxwell. His final day for the town will be February 23rd, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, sign that so I can put it in his personnel folder. And the second part of that is a road crew vacancy. We have two gentlemen here tonight that you will be speaking to momentarily. Interested in the road crew position. As you know, there's a small amount of people in this area that are qualified for these type of jobs. We didn't put any kind of advertising out. These guys, they all know each other in every one of these towns. So when one of these jobs comes up, it's not a big secret. So we had quite a bit of interest in this position. I was contacted by 3 or 4 different people. These are the two guys that are here to interview tonight for the job. And I think they're both very good candidates, and we'll get to speak to them in a minute. Any other business before we move on? Okay, there's no warrants tonight. Deb's gonna run a special warrant thing when she gets back to work on Thursday, but you can approve the minutes from February 2nd. Or February 5th.
Oh, I got. Oh. So personnel policy, Matt, that's gotta go back on the agenda going forward.
Yeah, I know.
I've got it. We're gonna do it in chunks
That's, yeah,
and
it's big.
it's a big one. So there's some things that don't even exist in it right now that we need to get in there. So, you and I can sit, do it in chunks.
Yep.
Bring it to the full board, and I guess we could chunk it, you know, get it,
Yeah.
get it
Just
approved.
chunk it in and
It's just
keep-
overwhelming.
Just keep reapproving.
Just
it.
keep updating the date.
Yep,
It's-
I knew we had lots tonight, so I didn't.
Yeah, it's too much to try to do in one
Yeah.
meeting. We
Yeah.
just gotta,
You did get a hold of the LCP last week as far as the unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
That was also
Yep,
good
it's
to
all
go.
set. Yep, we're all set. Yep.
okay. Man,
Good.
you good?
Yep.
Motion to approve the minutes from the select board meeting, Town of Coventry, Monday, February 5th, 2024, as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
I have.
Okay, here where'd Chris go?
So do we have something to read?
Sit up here now.
Are we doing this in executive session?
Yes, but I want to introduce them on the record first. Oh, we're gonna get into executive session. Okay, so we have two guys here for the position of road crew member. Yes, John, you can go first since you're here. We'll make Chris wait. This is gonna be an executive session, so Kate and Izzy. See you
Do I have to
later.
go downstairs and come and go in my office?
What do you guys think?
I have a glass in there, so. Just kidding.
No, glass of wine?
No. I wish.
I'm just gonna hold, you can read that. I'm just gonna tell this guy to wait downstairs.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
I move to find the premature general public knowledge regarding the town's legal strategy with certain contract matters would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if it discusses the strategy in public. Am I reading all this too?
Yeah.
Just the personnel part, not the legal part.
Oh.
That's what I thought.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss the hiring of an employee under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A3 of the Vermont statutes.
The executive session is gonna include Scott Breyer, Scott Morley, Dan Webster, Nate Standish, John Buchanan, and Matt Maxwell.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are back in open session at 6:48 PM.
So we don't even need a motion.
Present in the room.
Present in the room is the select board, road foreman Nathan Standish, town administrator Matt Maxwell.
So after doing two reviews for the vacant position on the road crew, we have decided, the board has decided to have Matt Maxwell offer John Buchanan the road crew position starting at $28 an hour. And having his time in service with no lapse, other than the 7 months or 8 months that he was gone. So the benefits that he had prior to him leaving will be reinstated. All those in favor?
We need a second.
Second,
Yep, now,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
very good. Somebody can adjourn us.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned, 6:50. Thank you, guys.